Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. This is MD Saiful Islam, an assistant teacher of Renown High School of Logan district of Bangladesh, and you are most welcome in my Saiful English Academy as well as Raisa English private home. Of course, you know that my dear learners, I'm a new teacher or new teacher in YouTube channels, and I'm trying to upload various kinds of classes of grammatical problem, and already various kinds of classes have been uploaded in my YouTube channel. Of course, you know that you watched my previous classes smartly, and with the reference of my previous classes, today's class have been present in front of you with a new argument, a new class named narration. Narration, another name of speech. Name of this narration is speech. Of course, you know that you have understood clearly. My dear learners, from today's class, I'm trying to make various kinds of videos about narration or speech, and step by step, I'm trying to upload various kinds of class about narration. So, my dear learners, at first, I want to request you be connected with me and try to understand what the themes about narration or speech is about that. My dear learners, before starting today's class, I want to declare topic of today's class. Topic of today's class. My dear learners, in this class, at first, I'm trying to show you about the definition of narration. Definition of narration. Second law, my dear learners, I'm trying to show you about the classification of narration. Classification of narration. Thirdly, my dear learners, I'm trying to show you about area of narration. Area of narration, and finally, or at last, I'm trying to show you about some basic rules of changing narration from direct to indirect, direct to indirect. So, my dear learners, now take a look at the board and try to understand. My dear learners, of course, you know that various kinds of important topics are in our English grammar, and among various kinds of important class, narration is one of them. And according to my mind, according to the new curriculum of Bangladesh textbook from 7 to higher classes, this category of question has been set. And from today's class, my dear learners, I'm trying to upload various kinds of class about narration or speech step by step. So, my dear learners, be connected with me if you want to learn various kinds of topics of narration. My dear learners, at first, I want to about definition of narration. I know that my dear learners, you know about this history of narration. And narration, the word narration is originate from the word narrate. Of course, you know that this word, of course, narrate, of course, a verb. And narration word is originated from this word narrate. So we can say that, my dear learners, narrate is equal to narration. Narration. Of course, this word narration, of course, a noun. Of course, a noun. Of course, another name of narration, my dear learners, speech. Speech. And this word is originated from speak. Okay, my dear learners, hope that you have understood clearly. My dear learners, if we want to define of narration, we can say that, my dear learners, the speech of a speaker is, sorry, called narration. Shortly, we may mind that, my dear learners, this definition about narration. We can see that, my dear learners, the speech of a speaker is called narration. The speech of a speaker is called narration. My dear learners, you may set this definition in your memory, and shortly you may remind, my dear learners, of the joy you have understood earlier. Now, my dear listeners, I'm trying to show you about classification of narration. Look at the board and try to understand about classification of narration. You have to mind that, my dear learners, narration is classified mainly into two oils. Two oil. Of course, you know that direct narration and indirect narration. Okay, narrators, we can let to mind that we can classify narration into two ways: direct narration, and indirect narration. Direct narration and indirect narration. Of that you have understood clearly. My dear learners, now I'm trying to show you about parts of direct narration. Direct narration. Direct narration. My dear learners, you have to mind that, my dear learners, there are two parts of direct narration. There are two parts of direct narration, such as reporting, verb, shortly RV. RV. And another words of direct narration is reported space, shortly from RS. Okay, my dear learners, of the two you have understood clearly. My dear learners, you'll have to mind that there are two parts of direct narration. Number one, reporting verb, shortly from RV. RV, and another part of direct narration is reported speech, shortly from RS. RS, of the two you have understood clearly. To clarify about your reporting verb and reported speech, I mean, look at the board. I may give an example, my dear learners. Suppose Raisa said to swipe, comma inverted comma, how are you, my, how are you today? Okay, my dear learners, how are you today? Okay, my dear learners, subject you have understood clearly. About the definition of direct narration and indirect narration, you have to mind that, my dear learners, the narration who is possessed a comma inverted comma, of course, the direct narration, and the narration who is possessed a no comma inverted comma, of course, indirect narration. And you have to mind, my dear learners, every direct narration has two parts. Key reporting about and reported space. Now, my question to you, my children, what's the reporting verb and what's the reported speech? That you know that, my dear learners, I know you will reply my questions, but I want to share something with you, my dear learners. You'll have to mind that, my dear learners, in the midst of the parts of a direct narration, comma inverted comma, you may consider reported speech. And outer part of reported speech is called reporting verb. Of the two, you have understood clearly. My dear learners, we may give various kinds of example about reporting verb. Suppose Raisa said to Soil, he said to me, Corinne said to me, Jabbar said to me, Manna said to me, Purnima said to me, Shapnur said to me, etc. etc. Of the two, you have understood clearly. My dear learners, in the midst parts of direct narration is called reported speech, and outer part of reported speech is called reporting verb. Reporting verb, of which you have understood clearly. My dear learners, Now, I'm trying to show you about your area of narration. Area of narration. So, my dear learners, take a look at the board and try to understand what are the things I want to make you understand. Area of narration. I know that my dear learners, you will be reply to or reply my questions. There are five categories of area of narration. Five area of narration. But yeah, I know that my dear learners, you know well about your area of narration. But at this moment, my dear learners, I'm trying to share only share with you, my dear learners. Number one area narration of assertive sentence. Okay, my dear learners. Number one is that narration of assertive sentence. Number two, narration of interrogative interrogative sentence. Number three, narration of imperative sentence. And number four, narration of objective sentence. And number five, narration of exclamatory exclamation Chode sentence. Okay, my dears, of that you have understood clearly. And from here, you'll have to mind five categories of area of narration, such as narration of assertive sentence, number two, narration of interrogative sentence, number three, narration of imperative sentence, number four, narration of optative sentence, and then narration of exclamatory sentence. Exclamatory sentence of the you have understood clearly. Okay, my dear learners, now I'm trying to show you about basic rules of sending narration. Basic rules of changing narration. Okay, my dear learners, you'll have to mind that, my dear learners, there are three categories of basic roles of changing narration. Changing narration, such as changing of fashion, changing of fashion. Number two, changing of verb. Number three, my dear learners, changing of adverb. Okay, my dear learners, you'll have to mind that, my dear learners, there are three categories of basic rules of changing narration. Number one, changing of person, changing of person. Number two, changing of verb, changing of verb, and number three, changing of adverb, changing of adverb. Of the two, you have understood clearly. You have understood clearly, my dear learners. Now I'm trying to show you about various kinds of topics about changing of fashion. Changing of fashion. So, my dear learners, take a look at the board and try to understand. Fashion. My dear learners, I know that, my dear learners, you know about various kinds of topics of fashion, but I want to share some information about your person. My dear learners, you'll have to mind that, my dear learners, various kinds of noun or pronoun used in a sentence, like as subjective, objective, and possessive form, are called person. Are called person. I may repeat again, my dear learners. Various kinds of noun or pronoun used in a sentence, as like as subject, as like as object, and as like as possessive are called person. And total person we can classify into three ways. Number one, my dear learners, first person. Number two, second person, and number three, third person. Okay, my dear learners, I know that my dear learners, you know these categories of definition of person oil, but only I want to share some information with you, my dear learners. First person, you'll have to mind that, my dear learners. Now my question to you: what's the first person? You have to mind that, my dear learners. Subject I and we are called first person. I and we are called first person, and you, only you are called second person, and except all noun or pronoun used in a sentence, except I, we, and you are called third person. Okay, my dear learners, of course, you may mind in another sense, and the speaker of a sentence is called first person. And about the definition of second person, you may mind that, my dear learners, the listener of a sentence is called second person, and except speaker and listener, all categories of subject, object, and possessive, of course, third person. Again, this category of person, that means third person, has two form. Number one, singular form, and number two, plural form. Okay, my dear learners, hope that you have understood clearly, my dear learners. Now I'm trying to show you about forms of person. Form of person. So, my dear learners, take a look at the board and try to understand form of a persons. Okay, my dear learners, you'll have to mind that, my dear learners, there are three categories of form of a person. Three categories of form of a person. Number one, subjective. Number two, my dear learners, objective. And number three, my dear learners, possessive. Okay, my dear learners, from this chart, from the discussion, you have to mind that, my dear learners, there are three categories of forms of a person. Every person. First, number one, subjective. You have to mind that, my dear learners, when a noun and pronoun are used in a sentence as like as a subject, and that form is called subjective form. That form is called subjective form. Suppose, my dear learners, the first person I, I, O. Subject. When I and we pronoun are used in a sentence as like as a subject, then it's called subjective form. But the objective form of I, me, and possessive my. Then think about talk about we. Objective form of we, of course, us, and possessive form of we, of course, our. Then think about you, second person. My dear learners, when any noun or pronoun is used in a sentence as like a subject, then it's called objective form. And when a noun or a pronoun are used in a sentence as a possessive, is called possessive form. Suppose you think about you, my dear learners, objective form of you, of course, you, and possessive your. Then think about the third person, some third person, he, him, his, she, her, possessive form her, they, them, their. Then think about it, it, its. Okay, my dear learners, and from the chart, you'll have to mind that, my dear learners, there are three forms of a person, every person, such as subjective, objective, and possessive. Subjective, objective, and possessive. My dear learners, suppose subject I, think about subject I, objective form of subject I, of course, me, and possessive my. Similarly, you'll have to mind that, my dear learners, we, us, our. We, us, our. Your. Your. He, him, his. He, him, his. She, her, her. They, them, their. They, them, their. Its. It's. Of the jaw, you have understood clearly. My dear learners, come to the main point. We are discussed some matter in the discussion matter of narration, and these categories of person must be changed according to person at the time of changing narration, and you'll have to mind the chart at the time of changing narration from direct to indirect, changing of person. Suppose number one, sorry, direct. Another corner in direct. Okay, my dear learners, you have to mind 3 points. Three points about changing of person in a narration from direct to indirect. Suppose number one, if subject of reported space is first person. Number two, if subject of reported space is second person, and thirdly, you have to mind if subject of reported space is third person. Okay, my dear learners, at the time of changing narration from direct to indirect, you have to mind these three categories of change about person. Suppose number one, if subject of reported space is first person, it must be changed. It must be changed according to subject of a reporting verb. Okay, my dear learners, from the church, you'll have to mind that, my dear learners, if subject of reported pairs is first person, at the time of changing narration from direct to indirect, you have to mind that, my dear learners, it must be changed according to subject of reporting verb. Reporting verb, and secondly, my dear learners, if subject of reported space is second person, it must be changed according to object of reporting verbs. And thirdly, my dear learners, if subject of reported space is third person, there is no chance. There is no chance. Okay, my dear learners, of the chart, you have understood clearly. About changing of person from the chart, you have to mind that, my dear learners, at the time of changing narration from direct to indirect, my dear learners, If subject of reported speech is a first person, it must be changed according to subject of reporting verb. And secondly, you'll have to mind that, my dear learners, if subject of reported speech is second person, it must be changed according to object of reporting verb. Object of reporting verb. And thirdly, you'll have to mind that, my dear learners, if subject of reported speech is third person, there is no chance. There is no chance. There is no chance of the tour. You have understood clearly. Okay, my dear learners, of that you have understood clearly. My dear learners, second point, come to discuss about second vesicles of changing verbs. You'll have to mind that, my dear learners, there are some special verb in our English grammar at the time of changing narration from direct to indirect, which are tense, which are senses. Suppose am is there. There are some auxiliary verb which can be changed at the time of changing from direct to indirect. Suppose if an indirect narration has am is or, you have to change it into was or. And if an indirect narration has was or, it must be changed at the time of indirect narration had been had changed into had. If any direction has a shell oblique will, you will have to change into would at the time of changing narration from direct to indirect. Similarly, can, could, may, might, must, had to. But if you can see V1 form of a verb in a direct sentence, it must be changed according to person at the time of changing direct to indirect into V2 form. That means first form. First form. If any direct narration has a V2 form, that means first form, it must be changed into had plus V3 form. That means first party say part form. Okay, my dear learners, except these categories of verb, there is an exceptional verb named come. Come. It must change into go. Into go. Okay, my dear learners, you have to mind that. Okay, my dear learners, now I'm trying to show you about basic rules of changing of adverb. You know that, my dear learners, there are some adverbs we can get in our grammar at the time of changing narration from direct to indirect, which are changed according to sequence of narration from direct to indirect. Such kinds of various kinds of special adverb already I have written in the board. So my dear learners, take a look at the board and try to understand. So if any direct narration has adverb to j, it must be changed into at the time of changing narration from direct to indirect into that j, that j. If any direct narration has tonight, you'll have to write down that night. If any designation has now, it must be changed into then. If any designation has tomorrow, it must be changed into the next day, the next day. If any direct nation has the next day, it must be turned into the following day. Similarly, the following night, the following morning, the following week, the following month, the following year, the following evening of the chart you have understood clearly. My dear learners, if any derivation has yesterday, it must be turned into the J before. The J before. Similarly, last day will change into the previous day. Similarly, last night turns into the previous night. Last morning turns into the previous morning. Last evening turns into the previous evening. Last week turns into the previous week. Last month turned into the previous month. Last year turns into the previous year. This turns into that, thus, sorry, this turns into those, thus, so into, change into so, here change into there, change into there, hither, change into thither, ego, change into before. Okay, my dear learners, of the Torah, you have understood clearly. My dear learners, there are some adjective verbs in our grammar. We can see which will be changed at the time of changing narration from direct to indirect. And you have to mind such kinds of basic rules of changing narration. My dear learners, suppose today changed into that day, tonight changed into that night, now changed into then. Tomorrow change into the next day change into the following day, the following night, the following morning, the following week, the following month, the following year, the following evening. Yesterday change into the J, B, B for before. Last day change into the previous day. Similarly, the previous night, the previous morning, the previous evening, the previous week, the previous month, the previous year, this, that, this, those, does, so, here, there, hither, thither, ego, before, etc. Various kinds of changing, maybe change at the time of changing narration from direct to indirect. Middle learners of the you have understood clearly. I don't want to lengthen today's class, but I want to summarize today's class. In this class, my dear learners, I'm trying to show about definition of narration. Then I'm trying to show you about classification of narration. Then I'm trying to I have tried to show you about parts of direct narration. Then I'm trying to show you about some changing area of narration. Finally, I'm trying to share about some basic rules of changing narration from direct to indirect. Hope that you have understood clearly. My dear learners, I don't want to learn into this class, but I want to share some information with you, my dear learners. Of course, you know that, my dear learners, I'm a new teacher or new teacher in YouTube channels, and I'm trying to use English conversation at the time of making various kinds of video classes. So, my dear learners, if you notice any faults or mistakes in the midst of my video classes, please excuse me and pray to all my channel so that I can help you, I can serve you, I can comfort you in the joy through my video classes. Throughout my life. So, my dear learners, no more today. Come to see again with a new argument, new class. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.